younger sisters are also amazing women. And I'm the oldest by 4 years. I'm also a type A personality, and I like to say that I consider myself a recovering perfectionist, right? So I was always a kid, right, who was working super hard and always had to have great grades, and those things, they can pay off. But the reason I tell you this is to maybe give you a little bit of insight into who I am as a person. And so when I was younger, I really expected to be first in pretty much everything in life, right? Because I was the oldest, right? So I expected, I would graduate first, I'd get married first, all of these different kinds of things. And as you will see as I tell my story, that did not necessarily happen. So I graduated from high school in 4 years, and I enrolled at the University of Virginia with the intention of being a lawyer. But in my two sisters, they continued the dream, right? They are both lawyers. They're mad at me because I broke up the family firm. But I'm here with you all, right? So I started with the intention of being a lawyer, but in my second year, one of my professors in my African American and Africana studies, we were just kind of talking. I was saying, oh, well, maybe a lawyer, maybe an advanced degree in history. And he convinced me that really what I should do is go to graduate school and get a PhD in history. So he marched me over to the Carter G. Woodson Center for African and African American Studies, told them that I was going to graduate school, and then told them to give me a job. And so I was very grateful. He played a great role in my life. And so my fourth year came, and as I'm sure many of you were doing, right, I was applying for graduate school, and really kind of came down to two different choices. So the University of Connecticut, and then also the University of Texas. These were the two that I decided to travel and visit. And at both institutions, I asked, kind of what's the average time to degree? And at the University of Texas, they told me, oh, it's normally about 5 to 6 years. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds great. I just did 4 years of undergraduate, this will be fine. So I accepted the offer from the University of Texas at Austin for many different reasons, including the fact that it was 85 degrees when I went to visit in March. It was a beautiful, beautiful time. And so when I showed up at Texas, right, remember I'm a type A personality, older sister, very driven. I had all kinds of expectations, right, about what my journey would actually look like. So when I got to campus, I expected to graduate in 5 or maybe on the outside 6 years. I said I'll be 27 or 28 with a PhD. I also expected to date, meet, and be engaged by the time I left. And I also expected that I would immediately have a tenure track job upon graduation. And why not, right? Everything else had kind of worked out for me in life, right? Everything had proceeded apace. But for the first time, I really ran into difficulty, right? And so I'll just share briefly. I didn't graduate in 5 years. I didn't graduate in 6 years. I didn't graduate in 7 years. Instead, it took me 8 years to finish my degrees. Well, I did earn 2, so I earned a master's degree and a PhD. Right? But remember, they set me up with the expectation that, 6 years and you should be finished, right? I also had a hard time dating, right? So I did not finish, right? Engaged and, off to have, 2.5 children and picket fence, all this, that, and the other. None of that was happening, right? And I also did not have a tenure track job immediately after finishing. And so, all of those things were really, really hard for me. And I think maybe what I would share is that maybe I'm about 10 years out from that now, that even though those things caused a lot of brokenness, that there definitely has been some beauty for me that has come from that. And so I thought I would share just a few things to think about. And the first thing is that for everything there is a season and a time for every activity under heaven. And so sometimes I have found that it's really helpful if we pause and ask ourselves, well, what season of life are we in personally, right? But also what season of life is the rest of the world in around us? So When I graduated and headed off to graduate school, it was 2007, 2008, right? So it was right at the beginning of one of the major financial crises, right, that our country had seen. And that was something that rippled throughout the entire time that I was in graduate school and also affected my job prospects as I finished up my degree. I'd also say that comparison is the thief or enemy of joy, and that you really have to be careful about the narratives that you tell yourself. So when I was comparing myself in my journey, right, to where other people were, what other people had, one of the things I found is that I was inherently telling myself a narrative about my own self-worth. And for me, that ended up being something that was really damaging, right? And so I always advise folks, your journey is your own journey, right? And your time is your own time. And then the final thing I would say is that there's nothing wrong with timelines, right? They can be very helpful, attempting to, kind of keep us on track, but we also have to be careful about how tightly we hold on to those timelines, right? If you hold on to them too tight, they may shatter, right? And you can find yourself wounded in the process. So I managed to finish, right? It took me a lot longer than maybe I might have liked. And I did manage to get a position, right? I originally had a fellowship, a visiting assistant professorship